You're watching HQ Spotlight. We have NFL preseason games on deck tonight. Pete Carroll returning to Seattle for the first time since parting ways with the Seahawks, as Seattle and Vegas are going to be facing off. Both teams sporting new quarterbacks. For the Raiders, it's Geno Smith, and for the Seahawks, it is Sam Darnold. It is year 2 for Seahawks head coach Mike Renner, and here he is discussing what he wants to get out of these preseason games.
There's so much to get out of these games. There's a lot of position battles that you want to see. You want to see how guys, handle, live and in color, schemes that necessarily they haven't been seeing the last, X amount of practices. Going against other people is really exciting. Being in front of the 12s is going to be a lot of fun, and we want to win the game.
McDonald also mentioning that some starters are going to play while others are going to rest. We have Mike Renner and John Breech joining us as we take a closer look at the Seahawks and the entire NFC West, giving you players to watch for each team in the division in the preseason. So Breech, kick us off. Who are you watching for Seattle?
I'm going with one of the big uglies, Jacqueline. That is Gray Zabel. Look, we know about Sam Darnold. Everybody's going to be watching Sam Darnold. But the one thing to keep in mind about Sam Darnold is that he needs a solid offensive line in front of him if he is going to be effective this year. If you look at what happened in Seattle last season with Geno Smith, the Seahawks gave up the 3rd most sacks in the NFL. So how do you go in and try and fix that problem? Well, you upgrade your offensive line, and that is where Zabel comes in. He's going to slot in at left guard. He's been bullying people throughout training camp. So now we get to see what he does when he plays in an actual game against actual opponents. So if he continues to play like this and look good, that is a huge step forward for a Seahawks offensive line that struggled a lot last year. So my eyes will be on the Seahawks offensive line, and specifically Gray Zabel for Seattle's 3 preseason games.
Breech, great minds think alike here. I'm going the other guard position. So watch these Seattle Seahawks guards here this preseason, because Christian Haynes, their 3rd rounder from a year ago, is probably the guy who has the most to benefit from switching schemes the way they did this offseason, from Ryan Grubb as OC to Clint Kubiak now, because they are going to be running stretch zone. Outside zone's the bread and butter of Clint Kubiak's scheme. That also just happens to be the bread and butter of what Christian Haynes did at UConn for 6 years. This guy can run outside zone till the cows come home. That's pretty much all he did at UConn. He was tremendous in that sort of scheme. That's why he didn't really fit in as a rookie, only 167 snaps, but he should be a perfect fit for this offense. And if he takes a big step forward, that will go a long way to fixing their offensive line woes.
Now, the Seahawks' regular season schedule is bookended by the Niners, so let's get to the Niners. This is a team that was hit very, very hard by the injury bug last season, coming up short of expectations from the season before that. Mike, you are looking at none other than Gator great Ricky Pearsall.
I'm going to go into Pearsall because that's the one position that's still hit by the injury bug. Brandon Ayuk may not be back and ready by the time the season rolls around. Juwan Jennings has been banged up this training camp. That means Ricky Pearsall is your de facto #1 wide receiver there. And when he was kind of down the stretch last year, week 17, week 18, he went over 200 yards between those 2 games. This time a year ago, he had a bullet wound in his chest. Now he's fully healthy and looks great during training camp. This guy's a high-level route runner, the perfect type of wide receiver for a Kyle Shanahan offense. I think he's going to thrive this year. I just want to see it here this preseason to let myself know that it's for real.
I am going to go to the opposite side of the ball, although I will be watching Pearsall just like Mike Renner. I'm going to go with a name most people might not have heard of. That is Upton Stout. He was their 3rd round pick. He's a cornerback who might be having the best training camp of any rookie in the NFL. During a radio interview on Thursday morning, 49ers general manager John Lynch compared him to Rondé Barber. When your general manager is comparing you to a Hall of Famer and you are a rookie, that says a lot about how well things are going in training camp. So he's going to probably be starting nickelback by week 1. If not, maybe a little bit later, but wouldn't be surprised if it happens in week 1. He's smart. He has high awareness. He plays fast. He's exactly what the 49ers need in that spot. And with Robert Saleh coming back and returning as the defensive coordinator in San Francisco, he is the perfect chess piece to be out there for Saleh. So Stout could be a big difference maker for that defense in 2025.
Hey, yeah, certainly high expectations if you're drawing comparisons to a guy that's got a gold jacket. Breech. Let's go to the Rams. They're kicking off the preseason against the Cowboys on Saturday. And Breech, there's a certain position battle that's catching your eye.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we can't talk about who we're going to watch in the preseason necessarily because the Rams sit everyone. I think Sean McVay goes out and finds fans out of the bleachers to play in the Rams preseason games. But one thing we've been talking about for the past few weeks is Matthew Stafford's back injury. Well, what if Stafford comes back and plays? He's going to need some strong protection because if he's taking big hits, that's how you aggravate a back injury. And the left tackle position specifically, Alaric Jackson is their normal starter, very good tackle, but he's dealing with blood clots, has not practiced during training camp. So now you're looking at a situation where either DJ Humphries or Warren McClendon could be that starting left tackle in week 1. So they've been kind of splitting reps at that spot this week. If it's DJ Humphries, he tore his ACL in 2023, only started 2 games in 2024, both with the Chiefs. And then you have Warren McClendon has only started 5 games in his 2 seasons with the Rams. So not a lot of guys who did very much last season. It's a huge question mark for the Rams right now. So I will be watching that left tackle spot closely in each of the Rams preseason games.
Yeah, I'm going to go to Terrence Ferguson, their second-round tight end that they drafted out of Oregon. Now, again, you hit the nail on the head. They don't really play a lot of people. They're only playing backups. So the good thing is Ferguson might play because he is a backup. Tyler Higbee is your starter there, but Higbee is 33 years old and really has not been a factor in this offense in a few years now. That is why they drafted Ferguson where they did. And when I watched Ferguson on tape, the comp I had for him was Tyler Higbee. The guy's very similar. He's a high-end route runner. He is just kind of skinny for the tight end position. He may not be an inline blocker. So how does he adjust to the blocking responsibilities that are so important to a Sean McVay coach offense? That's what I'm going to be watching more than his receiving ability, because that's going to dictate whether he sees the football field or not.
Guys, maybe we'll see their superfan Brenda Song getting some reps out there in the preseason game. It just feels like we're seeing more and more teams overall play their starters. Of course, maybe not with the Rams, but a lot of other teams I feel like are starting to do it, especially compared to last year. The Cardinals, they're one of those teams, and here's head coach Jonathan Gannon on why he's taking that approach this season.
I think it's the best thing for our team this year, honestly. You know, Teo, I think we're at a good point with our health. We're at a good point with our development, and I think that's, this year with our team, it's the best thing to do for our guys.
All right, Mike, with that in mind, who are you going to be focusing on?
I'm going to be watching rookie second-round pick Will Johnson, the cornerback out of Michigan. He, at least on paper, should be just what the doctor ordered for the secondary. It is a smaller, thinner secondary. When you go up against bigger wide receivers, they could kind of have their way with some of these guys. That ain't the case with Will Johnson, as you see right there with Marvin Harrison Jr. He is a big, physical dude. He fell to the second round because of injury concerns, not because of tape concerns. Go back to 2023. This guy was the best cornerback in the country that season, the most important player on that Michigan national championship team. If he steps in, starts right away, and becomes that press sort of guy that can really disrupt routes on the outside, that will go a long way for this unit that's completely revamped their front seven. So they should actually get pass rush. If they can then disrupt wide receivers along their routes, opposing offenses will have a very tough time moving the football.
The guy I'll be watching is an obvious one. It is Kyler Murray. But the reason I'm mentioning him is because we don't usually get to watch him in the preseason. This will mark the first time in 4 years that Murray has played in a preseason game. We saw Gannon kind of comment that he just feels like it's time to get his starters out there. And I think what he wants to see with this Cardinals offense is he wants to see them gel early so they can get a fast start to the regular season, because this is becoming a trend. The Carolina Panthers, the Cincinnati Bengals, there are a lot of teams who are putting their starters out there during the preseason. And this team has some stars on offense, Trey McBride, James Conner, but if there is one element of that offense that kind of needs some work, it's the receiving, the chemistry between Kyler Murray, Marvin Harrison Jr., Michael Wilson, Greg Dortch. So I think that Gannon just wants to see that amped up as the season starts, and if that offense gets rolling early, the Cardinals could be a dangerous team this season.
Breech, Mike, we certainly appreciate it, giving us NFC West players to watch in the preseason and getting a look at some upcoming preseason games for the division. As mentioned, the Seahawks taking on the Raiders tonight, maybe like a Geno Smith, Pete Carroll revenge preseason game. Then the rest of the action kicks off on Saturday, starting with the Cowboys and the Rams.
So we've talked about the NFC West, and then we're going to continue that conversation with how these teams will exit the season. Mackenzie Brooks and Larry Hartstein from Sportsline on the other side. Welcome back to the show, folks. We continue our focus on the NFC West, but we're taking a look at the betting lens of this. Odds to win at FanDuel. Now, it may surprise some to see the 49ers as betting favorites. They missed the playoffs a year ago. But earlier in the offseason, there was only like a 10 to 15 cent difference between the Niners and Rams. But as you can see, a 50-cent difference there separates San Francisco and LA. All right, let's bring in Larry Hartstein, and I've got Mackenzie Brooks on set from Sportsline. We're talking about essentially stage of elimination, where these teams in the NFC West will end their season, and we've got betting angles to prove it as well. So, Kenz, I'm going to start with you because I mentioned San Francisco. They are the betting favorite to the surprise of some. You're actually kind of fading them a little bit as we take a look at the machinations of their betting odds.
Yeah, I mean, if you'll give me plus 160 for them to miss the playoffs after finishing last in their division last year, I'm definitely willing to take that. It's tough because CMC is obviously generational talent, so awesome. When he left last year, they went from 4.8 yards per carry to 4.7. It wasn't like this massive, and without Debo being there to take defensive attention in the prime of the two of them and to be a chess piece there was such a crucial part of the success of CMC on this team, in my opinion, that now that he's gone, they become so much more predictable. They finished last in the division and they paid Brock Purdy $50 million. Not saying that's peak Brock Purdy, but clearly they were happy enough with whatever was going on with this offense on this team. So last in the division, you get your running back back. He will not be in his prime. And to think that any running back ever is worth 5 to 6 wins feels a little crazy to me.
Well, when you finish last in the division, you get to play the Browns and the Giants and the Bears on top of playing the NFC South and the AFC South. So they have the easiest schedule in football after they had the hardest schedule in football. And they were the most injured team in the league last year. So you're going to get some regression on that. They also missed 10 field goals by Jake Moody alone, whereas their opponents in close games in the fourth quarter went 9 for 9. So everything went against the 49ers last year. Now you're seeing the market really favor them this year, and I agree with it because of how easy the schedule is, because Robert Saleh comes back, because of Michael Williams, a big draft pick up on that defensive line. Of course, you need CMC to stay healthy, but the pieces are there for another deep run, and I have them making it all the way to the title game.
Which is 8-1. By the way, before we move on, which team do they lose in the title game before we move on to the Rams there, Larry?
I'll take the Eagles.
Okay, so you still like the Eagles at 8-1. Not too bad for San Francisco in that particular spot. Let's get to the Rams. Where do they exit? What's the stage of elimination for them as we take a look?
I got a little more optimism for them. I'll take them to lose in the wild card here. I think the ceiling for this team can certainly get them to the playoffs. Obviously, you need to see Stafford healthy, and he hasn't had a lot of time with Adams. Maybe that concerns some people. I feel like they're both veteran enough. I'm not that worried about it. But even the defense, obviously you can't replace Aaron Darnold, but they have so many guys they drafted, so many guys that are developing and just getting better, some young talent there. So the ceiling of this team between Stafford and Adams, I think, is worth the play, especially at the odds we're getting.
I agree with you completely on the ceiling. This team, if Stafford is healthy and that defense plays like they did at the end of last year when they almost went into Philly and won, they could win it all. But with Stafford not practicing yet at all, dealing with an aggravated disc, this is a guy who missed 8 games with a spinal cord contusion just a couple seasons ago, and the Rams went 5-12 that year. He also had back fractures back in 2018 and 2019. So, Jimmy G can lead them to, maybe 8 wins, maybe 9 wins, but I will say that they missed the playoffs because of Stafford's health.
Okay, so this is a team, by the way, with Sean McVay, back-to-back 10-7 seasons, and they did, of course, the way they rested everyone in Week 18, and they also took Philly, by the way, to probably the closest brink in the playoffs, given what
I remember,
Eagles
Tommy.
did. I know. It was close. It was closer than it had to be, right? Let's get to the next 2 teams. I'm going to have the Maestro go first on each of these here. So we just talked about Mike Macdonald year 2. What's the Seahawks' outlook with the new quarterback?
Well, there's not a bad team in the division. They're going to have a great defense. They add DeMarcus Lawrence. But how is Sam Darnold going to play behind the 3rd worst offensive line in football? That's per PFF, despite all the great things that Breech and Renner said about the O-line's additions in the previous segment. So I just think we saw what Sam Darnold is when he doesn't have a clean pocket in the last 2 games of the season last year for the Vikings, and it wasn't pretty. So I'll say 8-9, somewhere around there, and they missed the playoffs.
I'm really high on this team. I'm not going to lie. I love the idea of Mike Macdonald in year 2. There's not a lot of flashy names on defense, but there weren't really flashy names in Baltimore in year 1 that became flashy names in year 2 with Mike Macdonald too. So he's already improved this defense. You know, they allow a field goal less than they did the season prior. I think that continues as well. And the other thing is, like, this was a 10-win team last year. I'm not asking them to be exactly the team of last year, but I do think between Darnold, between Cooper Kupp, Jackson Smith, and Jigba, they can be at least 90% of what we saw from Geno and DK, with the ceiling of being 10% better than them, probably going to be just around the same. So I don't think it's this major drop-off offensively, and I think this defense only continues to improve. So I think wild card is in their future.
Okay. So
and over 7.5 wins for those keeping track at home.
It's a little bonus play for Ken's there on the Seahawks. And then finally, because it's been great, you guys have had varying views on our teams in the NFC West here. The Cardinals, our colleague Lige Douzable thinks they're going to win the division, by the way. And I'm curious, Maestro, as you take a look at their odds and where they exit, where do you have the Cardinals finishing their season?
Well, I had them losing in a wild card game, but I was torn because I think they could go further. No team got better on defense than Arizona. When you had Josh Sweat, who was probably the Super Bowl MVP with 2.5 sacks and causing the interception to Zach Bond, and you had Calais Campbell and Dalvin Tomlinson, and your top 5 draft picks all on defense, including Will Johnson. I mean, this defense is going to be so much improved. The offense has so much young talent led by, Marvin Harrison and Benson and Trey McBride, and Kyler is still, in his prime. I think the sky's the limit for this team, but right now I have them only making the wild card round.
I could be convinced into this one. I'll be honest, this isn't my most passionate feeling about this team. I'm not high enough on them to get them to make the playoffs yet, honestly. I mean, Trey McBride doesn't score touchdowns.
No.
Ever.
It took a long time before he got his first last year.
I mean, you go back to literally his senior year of college, he had 90 catches and 1 touchdown. There's so many, and I'm not sold on the Marvin Harrison Jr. and Kyler Murray connection yet. There's a lot this team has to sell me on what they can do in the red zone that I'm really just not seeing. There's a reason we have their kicker as a top 15 kicker. I think he's going to be a little bit busy this season. So I see the ceiling with this team. I'm not sold enough yet to say they're in the playoffs.
Okay, great stuff, guys. I'm entering this segment as we're exiting. I've heard we're wrapping this thing up, but Ken's is going to join us later on in the show. Maestro, certainly appreciate it. Make sure you check out the Early Edge. It's multiple times a day, every day. Scan the QR code, check them out on YouTube, or however you listen to your podcast.